What's up YouTube, Trashy here, back with a big ol' list of beginner tips and tricks for Stardew Valley. This game might be almost a decade old at this stage, but if my comment section is anything to go by, there are still so many people picking up the game for the first time. Now, whether you're a brand new or returning player here for advice, or if you just want to learn everything you can about Stardew Valley, or if you've just popped this video on for some company in the background while you do your thing, hopefully there will be some tips and tricks here that are useful for you. Going forward, keep in mind that there might be some very mild early game spoilers, but nothing too detailed because we're keeping it beginner friendly today. And with that being said, let's get right into it. My first tip might be a little counterproductive to the video here, but it is the most important one. I wholeheartedly recommend going in as blind as you possibly can and playing however you please in whatever way brings you the most joy. You can always use what you learn in your next playthrough or start over a few years in and optimize the way that you play however you want. There is no wrong way to play Stardew Valley. This game has been out for a while now, and there's so many guides and videos about the best way to play that it's easy to feel like you've fallen behind before you even get started. Now, a lot of people jokingly, and others not so jokingly, argue that Stardew Valley isn't really a cozy game. I mean, I completely understand where they're coming from. The days and the seasons work on a time limit, and the community center needs a bunch of materials that are specific to each season, and missing one little thing in one season can seem like the end of the world. Add that to the sheer amount of guides and videos on how to min-max for this or that, or speedrun to the community center, and you have yourself a cozy game disguised as an intense experience. But that experience is player manufactured. Take this game at whatever pace that you want, because that is exactly how it was designed to be played. Everything will come back around, you never truly miss out on anything. Play whatever way you want to, even if that turns out to be min-maxing. Just have fun, there's no actual rules to this game. Leading off of that, if it's your first time playing Stardew Valley, you might have been under the impression that there's so much to do constantly, but then you start playing, you plant your seeds, you clear your farm a bit, and then you just kind of wander aimlessly, unsure what to do, tempted to just sleep until your plants grow. No? Just me? Listen, you are allowed to wake up, water your plants, and go back to sleep. Sometimes we just really want to skip a couple of days to achieve a goal, and that's okay. Not everyone has the same amount of time to play games and to get enjoyment out of them, so you do you. That being said, just keep in mind that while it might seem like you have nothing concrete to do in a specific day and the urge to go to sleep takes over, you could also be using that time to do so many different things. You could go farm for ore in the mines that you can later use to make useful processing items or to upgrade your tools. You could go looking for forageables and these little worms, which hide a lot of valuable artifacts, hidden books with useful information in them, and other useful items. You can spend the day fishing for some extra money, you could track down and talk to all of the villagers and give them gifts if you have some lying around, which we'll talk about in a bit, or you could do the villager quests that appear in the notice board outside of Pierre's shop. You could even take the day to do some landscaping or decorating on your farm. Robin sells a lot of different flooring and furniture recipes that look great anywhere. Now let's talk a little bit about general settings and UI stuff that the game doesn't really tell you. Something that I found incredibly useful when I started playing was making sure that always show tool hit location was checked. I can't tell you how many times I accidentally destroyed my crops because I wasn't aiming where I thought I was aiming, and in that same vein, you probably shouldn't hold a pickaxe or an axe while harvesting your crops. You can also turn off flash effects caused by lightning or bombs if you're sensitive to flashing or simply find it annoying like I do. While you're here, you can adjust the size of the UI on the screen and also make it so that the zoom buttons are visible on screen. Personally, I like to play zoomed out, and I usually actually play with a mod that lets me zoom out even more because I think it looks better, and also you can see forageables and artifact spots from way further away. Make sure to turn on advanced crafting settings. This allows you to not only see how many of each item that you've crafted, but it also allows you to see how many you can craft with the resources that you have on you. And lastly, you can turn on item stowing here, which makes it so that you can put away items held over your head while still having them selected in your inventory. This allows you to stash your things before accidentally gifting your most valuable item to someone awful like Pierre. A little hoarding is okay. I recommend keeping at least 2 of most things in case you need them for a bundle or for a villager request. However, there are some very clear-cut exceptions to this. For example, you should be amassing as much wood, fiber, sap, stone, moss, and other typical crafting items as you possibly can. They're not worth enough to warrant selling anyway, and they're incredibly useful for crafting later on. On the opposite side of this spectrum, we have most museum artifacts, which can be freely sold once they've already been donated. The exceptions to this are of course your typical precious gems such as diamonds, rubies, emeralds, jades, etc., most of which have uses for either trading, gifting, or quest purposes. And you'll also want to hold on to the first prismatic shard and dinosaur egg that you find, and then donate the next if you find another, as they can be pretty hard to come by. You'll also want to keep one dwarf gadget and every single ancient seed that you find after donating your first one. I'm not going to give you any context for any of these items because this is a beginner's guide and I don't want to spoil too much, so I guess all that I'm left with is just trust me, bro. You can pretty much sell every other museum item for a small profit, as they're not really needed for anything once they've been donated. Of course, if you're doing some hoarding, you are going to need somewhere to store all of your stuff, especially if you end up hoarding most things anyways, like I do. There are 3 storage methods that I have tried, the first being make a bunch of chests and put stuff wherever it'll fit, and let me tell you, it may seem manageable early on, but you will be grateful for your early game self if you set up a proper storage system. I like to keep my storage in a shed, but you can keep it in your house or out in your farm if you'd prefer. The important thing is that it's somewhat organized. Now you can use signs to designate the contents of each chest. For example, you can use image signs to sort chests into crops, resources, ores, gems, monster drops, food, or whatever other category you can think of. And the same can be done with text signs. Just as an added tip, with this system I like to keep my storage and signs up against the back wall of the shed or with some sort of fencing surrounding it so that I don't accidentally change the item on the sign or open the text menu. The other method, which happens to be my preferred one, is to store things by color. Now I know this might sound a little unmanageable and wild at first, but the more that you try and assign items to different categories, the more complicated sign storage can become, and suddenly you can't remember if you stored your cheese in your fridge, your animal products chest, or in your food chest. But with colors, there's not really any way to go wrong. It'll be personal to your opinions on which color is what. For example, I consider daffodils to be yellow even though the sprite is mostly green, so it goes in the yellow chest. This makes it so much easier to find things. Of course, it can still be useful to have a few specific chests, such as one for spare seeds so you don't have to remember what color each package is, or one for coal, ore, and bars to make furnace trips easier. Speaking of storage, dressers can store infinite amounts of clothes, shoes, and even rings. This saves a bunch of space. Now you'll probably have to buy one from Robin's rotating stock, so make sure to check on different days if you don't see it, but there is one farm that comes with a dresser already in the farmhouse, which is the Meadowlands farm. Now it does have its other quirks, pros and cons, but luckily I have a video about all of the different farm choices in Stardew and how they can benefit you. So I'll leave it on the screen and in the description below if you want to check it out. Also, speaking of Robin, while you're there, she sells a bunch of items that can help save you a lot of time. You can buy yourself a calendar and put it up in your house so that you don't have to go all the way to Pierre's to check events and birthdays. Ew. And she also sells a telephone that's super useful, which you can use to call up the various businesses around town to check their opening hours and the price of most of their stock. As a bonus, if you call Gus, he will let you know what the saloon's special for the day is, which changes based on a rotating stock. Robin also sells the workbench, a heavily underused item in my opinion. This workbench pulls from any chest placed in any of the squares around it and makes crafting much easier. You could set up a system of 7 chests around a workbench. You only need to leave one square free to access it, and you will be able to see at a glance exactly what you have to work with, especially if you have advanced crafting turned on. Robin also sells the recipe for big chests, which have a lot more space than regular chests. They're pretty pricey to make an early game, so you don't really need them until you start struggling for storage space. And if you do want to replace your old chests, all you have to do is plop the big one down on top and all of your items will automatically transfer. Now, a pretty major aspect of the game that's never really explained to you is energy and how it works. First of all, using any of your tools aside from your scythe, your sword, and your pan consumes energy. Even accidentally using a tool will consume energy, albeit slightly less. However, you will definitely want to avoid accidentally using your fishing rod too much, as it consumes a lot of energy. In the early game, it can be pretty easy to run out of energy when you've barely even started your day, so maybe don't go too wild with your crops until you can use sprinklers. However, as you level up your skills and upgrade your tools, they'll use less energy, and you will find star drops throughout the game that increase your overall energy. Keeping a hold of any forageables that you find around can be a great way to top up your energy, or you can make field snacks at level 1 foraging, which can easily be achieved. All you need to do is chop down around 7 trees and their stumps. You can also make bug steaks at combat level 1. Both of these give the exact same amount of energy, although I am partial to bug steaks because bug meat is pretty easily farmed in the early levels of the mines from these little guys, but we will talk more about that in a bit. One last tip for energy: in your first summer you will gain access to the railroad area, and you can also start using the spa. Now, it does take a while to get in and out of the spa, so this should really only be a last resort kind of thing if you really need the energy, but chilling out here recovers both energy and health, albeit quite slowly. Now, let's take a look at a few tips to help you around the farm itself. When it comes to harvesting, you will only get experience from actually harvesting crops, not watering or planting them, but you can make this process a little smoother. First of all, never attempt to harvest your crops with a tool like a pickaxe in your hands, because it probably won't go too well for you. With either empty hands or maybe your scythe or your sword, you can hold down your harvest key or button and just run along your crops. You can make this even more efficient if you're harvesting and replanting by holding your harvest button down with the new seeds in your hand, and you will plant and harvest as you go. Also, when it comes to watering your plants, wells and lakes are not the only place that you can refill your watering can. You can use your very own kitchen sink, this spot in the greenhouse, and if you've chosen the beach farm, you can apparently use ocean water. I mean, listen, the beach farm is already rough enough considering that sprinklers don't work in sand, so I'm going to choose to ignore how absolutely insane that is, Concerned Ape. When cleaning your farm, remember that you can actually direct the way that the trees fall depending on which side that you're standing on when you chop it down. And this goes for all 4 sides of the tree. If you stand to the right, it falls left, and of course if you stand to the left, it falls right. Never again do you have to lose your wood to your lakes. When it comes to decorating your farm, it turns out that decorations are actually pretty useful. First of all, placing down pathing actually makes you go a little bit faster, making the most of your limited time and great for large farms. Plus, Robin has a wide array of path recipes that you can purchase to spruce up your farm however you want. Also, remember that you can place torches on fences and even on top of your sprinklers so that you can easily navigate your farm at night. Staying on the farm but talking about the farmer, if you make a mistake while creating your character or you simply feel like it's time for a change, you can eventually change your appearance if you get to 4 hearts with the wizard. There is another way to get to this area, but it is definitely harder to do than getting 4 hearts with the wizard, so we're just going to stick with that for now. Once you achieve these hearts, you can hop down to his basement and you can change whatever you want for a flat 500 gold fee. Speaking of making friends, here are a few tips for befriending villagers quicker. As you probably know, everyone has their own loved, liked, neutral, disliked, and hated items. If you give someone an item they enjoy, you will gain friendship points, but if you give them an item that they dislike or hate, you will lose friendship points. You can learn each villager's likes and dislikes through dialogue, in-game events, and hidden notes, but it is worth noting that fruit from fruit trees are a universal like. So planting a few trees when you can is a great way to get your hands on some decent gifts for the villagers. Oh, and all flowers, aside from poppies, are also universally liked gifts. It's worth keeping in mind that higher quality gifts actually give more friendship points, so keep your gold and iridium qualities for gifting. And it also goes without saying that if you gift a villager a gift on their birthday, they will receive a massive boost to the amount of friendship points that they get, so make sure to bring them a loved item. Remember that you can also use the friendship screen in your inventory to check out each villager's preferred and disliked items. As you find more out, they will automatically appear here and be much easier to keep track of. If you, like many other players, struggle to level up your fishing in early game, there is kind of a way around that. You can ditch the bamboo fishing rod that Willy gives you at the start of the game and go and buy yourself a training rod for 25 gold instead. Now the training rod can only catch really basic normal quality fish, but it does set the fishing bar to the same size as if you were already level 5 fishing, and the progress bar on the training rod depletes 33% slower than all of the other rods. This makes it so much easier to execute perfect catches, which multiply fishing experience by 2.4. This means that you can level up faster and then buy yourself a better rod when you feel more comfortable. There is also a particular special order for Pam that you can take on in town called the Strong Stuff. Once completed, you will unlock a channel on TV called the FIBS, the Fishing Information Broadcasting Service, which gives you information about which fish you can catch and where. Incredibly useful. Now let's talk a little bit about the mines. The mines can be kind of annoying to start with until you get some better weapons and upgrade your pickaxe, and once you unlock access to the Adventurers Guild, you can actually buy different weapons and rings depending on what level you've reached in the mines. The way that the mines works means that you can leave via a ladder and they will have completely reset their contents, meaning that you can repeatedly farm the same floors for ore or for bug meat like we mentioned earlier, or even more monster spawns. If you encounter an infested floor on any given day, it will still be infested no matter how many times you exit and re-enter. This means that finding a nicely situated infested floor, such as right after an elevator, can be incredibly useful for leveling combat and also for completing monster eradication goals, especially the 1,000 slimes that you have to kill. I'd also recommend popping a chest inside the entrance to the mines and maybe even placing a couple of furnaces down. You can save space in the early game and save time by smelting your ore as you go. It's worth mentioning that when you hit level 120 of the mines, a few things change that the game does not tell you about. After level 120, all monsters now have a very small chance to drop prismatic shards, but they also get a 50% defense buff, their HP increases from anywhere between 0 and 100%, and they can do up to 50% more damage. So, keeping this in mind, maybe sometimes it is better to take your time with the mines initially rather than racing all the way to floor 120. Speaking of placing chests and furnaces in the mines, don't let yourself be held back by the limits society has placed on you. Put some furnaces in a chest at Clint's. Keep a chest near all of your fishing spots and a bait maker inside. Use the desert for a possibly illegal wine operation. Drink mayonnaise in front of Pierre. The world is your oyster. Also, keep in mind that if you do place a chest in the way of a villager's path, they will just bonk it around until it's out of their way. However, they will destroy any machines and crafted items, so be careful where you place your stuff. Also, speaking of placing chests everywhere, make sure that signs exist. You can place signs to remind yourself to do certain things, and I like to use strategically placed text signs as reminders to check my TV and calendar or to pet and feed my animals. Now, let's talk a little bit about the community center. I've mentioned this before, but I will continue to bring it up because every time that I do, someone tells me that they never noticed. Once you've done the whole community center setup and you can donate items to the bundles, this button will appear in your inventory. You can use this button to check community center bundles from a distance but not donate to them, and it will also do a little wiggle if you hover over something that you need to donate. However, this wiggle only applies to bundles that you've unlocked access to, so don't go selling everything just yet. Now, completing the community center within your first year is a very common challenge and goal, but there's nothing wrong with taking your time. If you do want to try and get it done relatively quickly, there are some tips and tricks that you can use. First of all, when starting your farm, it helps massively if you turn the option on to complete the community center within your first year. This essentially makes it so that the traveling cart will sell red cabbage seeds at some point during year 1 between spring 7th and winter 16th, bypassing the need to wait until Pierre starts selling them during year 2. However, it's only guaranteed on one day, whether or not you check the traveling cart that day, so it can be very easy to miss. And speaking of the traveling cart, it appears in Cindersap Forest every Friday and Sunday and closes at 8 PM. Aside from red cabbage seeds, it also stocks an enormous range of items that also need to be donated to the community center, including red cabbages themselves. The catch is that the traveling cart's stock changes every single time that it visits, and the list of items that can appear is massive, but it's worth checking every week. You could save yourself the pain of waiting for a rabbit's foot or get that last out of season fish that you were missing for that one bundle. Also, speaking of bundles, make sure to pay attention to how many items are actually needed. Some bundles have multiple options to donate, such as the animal bundle or the artisan bundle. Aside from that, the best advice that I can give you if you want to smash out the community center as soon as possible is to plan ahead. Have a look at what each bundle requires and plan accordingly. For example, if you need a truffle, you know that you need at least a fully upgraded barn and 1 pig. However, if you want to get that truffle by year 1, you will need to have that pig on your farm by the start of fall. Or get lucky and find a truffle at the traveling cart. Or just play at your own pace, and whenever you get there, as long as you're having fun. While we're on the topic of the community center, Demetrius will visit you once you've earned a total of 25,000 gold, and he will ask if you would like to put fruit bats or mushrooms in the empty cave on your farm. Now, you're probably wondering why that's relevant. Well, the fruit bat cave, although unreliable, tends to spawn a lot of items that you can donate to the community center. Plus, fruit is a universally liked gift among the villagers. But the mushroom cave does produce mushrooms reliably every 2 days, and is a nice little source of foraging experience. Plus, it comes with a free dehydrator. The choice is yours, but the fruit bat cave is definitely ideal if you want to speed up community center completion. Now, this game doesn't necessarily give you a tutorial, but if you check the TV on Mondays and Thursdays, Living Off the Land gives some helpful tips here and there, such as indicating when certain mini-events happen, like extra shells showing up on the beach. Also, remember to check the library for any hidden books that you dig up, because they can contain some incredibly important information. And this last one might seem a bit obvious, but it took me a while to realize. If you don't remember which items you have and haven't donated to the museum yet, just read the description, and if it says Gunther can tell you more, you still need to donate it. And there you have 19 beginner's tips for Stardew Valley. I still think that the most important rule is that there are no rules. There's no wrong way to play or experience this game. But it also doesn't hurt to look stuff up every now and then. Aside from YouTube videos like the ones that I make and others made by some very knowledgeable humans, the Stardew Valley wiki is a wealth of information. Play how you want, but don't feel like you're doing something wrong by looking stuff up. Stardew Valley doesn't really give you much guidance, which is intentional, but sometimes it can be nice to get a little help here and there. Now, unfortunately, this video is coming to an end, but wait, don't click off yet. This next bit is super important, I promise. If you enjoyed this and you're looking for even more Stardew tips, I have a whole series of seasonal tips and tricks called cavern guides, money-making guides, and so much more, with a lot more on the way. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, if there's any guides that you'd like to see me make, and whether you think there are more doors or wheels in the world. I need to settle an ongoing debate that we've been having over on my Twitch channel where I stream various different games a few times a week, so stop by, say hi, and tell me what you think. Are there more doors or are there more wheels in the world? Okay, love you, bye!